Oh, hello there. Welcome back to the Culture Club Half Hour, the 30-minute show in which two members, aka half of Culture Club,
Right.
get together to talk. How are you, Jeff?
I'm great. I'm doing great.
That's good.
Yeah.
More
Yeah.
emphatic than I was expecting.
Yeah, it's I can't complain. It's interesting. Like this morning as we talk about the news this morning, I was going through my usual routine of like putting on NPR's Up First podcast, which gives you the news, and today I just couldn't do it, dude. Today I was like,
Really? Why?
I just can't. The same,
Too much Diddy?
It's no, there's not enough Diddy, quite frankly, in my feed. So, but no, it's like, it's the same events that are happening in the world, and the world's moving fast, but like the shit that matters is moving slow. So I don't know. I was a little, I had to turn it off, and instead I went over to a podcast, and I don't know. I was listening to Acquired, listening to the Hermes podcast. Shout out the Acquired podcast for those that don't listen to it.
Oh, interesting. I actually, I've heard great things about that podcast, but I haven't listened to it yet. And Hermes, I use Hermes as an example all the time of a brand that is, it exists through product and storytelling in a kind of a fascinating fashion to me, and also, obviously is commercially a juggernaut, and so
Right.
it's yeah, I'd be interested. I'll dig that one up. Okay, so speaking of fast though, let's get your take on something a little closer to our streetwear provenance. It was Air Max Day yesterday. Did you watch the Air Max TN spot?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
I'm sorry. I would have liked your take on it. I'm officially a hater. I didn't like it at all. Mainly because I feel like it just did the Nike spot thing, and they've now descended into they've taken the formula so far down the formula hole that it's descended into parody, basically. That, and I think the shoe is rubbish, but that's an aesthetic determination.
It's if I can be as honest to say, like, I forgot it was Air Max Day. It wasn't in my feed.
Ooh, really? That's interesting.
And I think the feed thing is like, as soon as you said, I was like, how did I not catch that?
Yeah.
And, did you feel like you saw it more on like Instagram? Did you feel like you saw it more on Twitter?
So yeah, this is
where did you
question.
absorb it?
Couple things. So I only saw the spot because friend of the show, Ben Pruce, sent it to me after he and I had talked about the shoe, which the TN, which again, like, just think is rubbish.
The DN, by the way, the next generation, right?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I mean, look, either way, the not wearing it generation, but the spot got me then thinking about Air Max Day, and I saw it in a few people. I saw it, like Eric Costin does a switch heel, Ficky manual, pop shove it out, and wearing a pair of AF1s and or not AF1s, sorry, AM1s. And I don't know, it was not super present in my feed either. There was an event called Maxland or something like that at Dougal Greenhouse here in New York over the weekend, which I didn't go to, and so I don't have a comment about that. But it's funny because it was not super present in my feed yesterday. You would have expected it to be, and I would have especially expected it to be super present in your feed,
right?
Just because I feel like you're closer to the sort of product than I am.
Well, if I could be honest, now that I think about it, it was in my son's feed. He actually showed me.
Interesting.
He showed me the DN model 2 days ago, so I don't know if he saw it on a leak, an exclusive look. Maybe
it's been out. The design's been out for a while because like Supreme came out with their SMU a couple weeks ago,
right? And I have to say, like,
released it.
My son's into it, dude. And maybe it's a generational thing, like that recomposed airbag with almost like the 3 slots there. I think it's something that he's super into it. I think it's a generational thing.
Interesting.
It reminds me a lot of an era of like the first era of like bulky, chunky, which kind of gets forgotten, which is like the foam posit era, where you really had a large basketball shoe. And I think that the person who has an appreciation for that is going to be turned on, I think, from the DN as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know.
But
I don't see it.
It definitely was not in my feed. It definitely was like I think that's crazy.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because it's like and you should the idea of that chunky heel unit and just the larger profile silhouette at this moment is kind of intriguing, especially given the other shoe that was everywhere this last week, which was the Dries Van Noten trainer. That's sort of like a Samba-like, if you will.
Right.
I mean, it's closer to a bunch of other Adidas models than the Samba per se, but from to the layman, probably uses some of the same cues, which is super minimal, like super plimsoll, flat sole, more like the A6 Mexico or the Onitsuka Tiger Mexico.
Right.
Yeah, it's just interesting to see. It's like where are you placing your bets? Are you placing your bet on super low profile, or is the chunky thing back already, type thing?
We've seen this look on women, like the white Samba with the gum sole was clearly a moment, and still is. I think there's
oh yeah,
it still looks great. I think on women in general, that silhouette looks great on women.
I mean, it's a kind of an unassailable shoe, period, right? It's just more a question of like, are you wearing it because it's just great, or are you wearing it because it's the thing you're supposed to wear right now, type thing.
Which is what a lot of people do, right? A lot of people wear what they're supposed to wear. That's one of the reasons they listen to it. Why they get into it. I love the thing that I love the most about the space is watching how trend changes, and more importantly, how to watch how trend makes it to the mainstream and how long it takes.
Yeah.
And how long it stays there, right? And things ebb and flow, and I think there's no doubt that slim silhouette is killing it. I mean, Puma came out, of course, with the relaunch of the Retro, which I'm forgetting now, which also has
the Mostro.
Exactly. These are we're in that.
I hate that shoe.
We're in that cycle, dude.
I have always hated that shoe.
We're in that cycle. We're in that cycle where
for sure.
that product. Sorry, let me step back. What's interesting is to see like which product didn't kick off when it first hit the market versus product that has absolutely kicked off once it came back in, right? Are there examples of that we can think of? I would say like on the reverse of it would be like the NMD from Adidas killed for a while, then it was just like over flooded. Right. The market was done.
I mean not the hyper example being the Roshi,
right?
Course. Like gigantic, cool for a tiny moment, then gigantic, then vanished. Interesting.
But fashion's job, and his job was, as we know, to push the boundaries, to kind of test our limits as to what we're into, what's not, what we're not into.
Right.
And I love that.
Wait, did you just make fashion a person? I like that.
I want to meet.
I want to meet. You said fashion job, and then you said is for him.
I said,
and
him.
I was like, no, I want to meet.
Did I?
I want to meet fashion. Yes, you did.
I apologize. Let me take that back. Fashion itself, it's. But it's cool. Also, he stepped down.
Headline for this episode: Fashion is cool.
Fashion is. But on the,
oh my God.
On the other side of that, Dries himself stepping down from his namesake was quite a story that broke this week. I don't know if I have much to say for it, and I think Jian would be great for him to come in and give us more commentary on it. But these things happen. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, right. People get older, they quit jobs, they want to go on gardening leave, whatever the case is. Like, fair fucks. Yeah. That should be awesome. By the way, speaking of gardening, so it's been, there's a lot has been made of Dries leaving his namesake label, as you said, and then going and like to tend to his garden or whatever the case is. That's the story that I've seen referred to on a number of occasions. It then brought up in my head a shop and a brand called Garden Air, which is like a garden and then Heir, like heir to the throne, HEIR. So Garden Air, one word, who were the first people that I saw, the first place that I saw selling and promoting the rubber garden clogs that all of the cool downtown people seem to have over the last 6 months or so. Anyway, gardeners seems kind of awesome. I'm not a gardener. I like plants. I used to kill them all the time. They seem to be living now, which is amazing. Maybe it's a testament to my karmic trajectory.
Yeah.
But in any case, the reason I bring it up is that gardening seems to be it's having a moment. Tractor Supply yesterday, and this is shout out to Ben Pruce for sending this to me. Tractor Supply launched a collection, I believe, with Martha Stewart.
No way.
Martha Stewart and Tractor Supply launch gardening apparel collection. Yeah, this was in Retail Dive yesterday. And it's going to be found in 50 select stores and online. And it is, let's see what it says here. Items in the 8-piece collection are jackets, shirts, puffer vests, cargo convertible pants, and overalls, the company said. So there you go. If you want your convertible Martha Stewart pants to wear to cocktails, you go to tractorsupply.com and you can sort
it's right there. I'm looking at the collection myself right now. She also did,
I haven't looked at it yet. So okay. Let's check it out. Go ahead.
I think it's a little bit of the ruse is in really the details of this that's not mentioned in the press release. But for instance, there is a chainsaw, a Martha Stewart chainsaw in this collection as well.
Whoa, come on.
There is a Hori Hori garden knife. There's, of course, a duvet, which I've never seen sold at a Tractor Supply. And she even designed her own garden sprinkler. So these are, to be honest, I think that stuff is the interesting stuff.
The Martha Stewart telescoping pole chainsaw extending up to 15 feet. For $84 on sale. On sale. I don't know if this is. I don't know. Is this? Does this?
It could be part.
Does that feel like it's part of the same thing though? Either way, the fact that Martha Stewart has a chainsaw is just exciting to me. Period.
Let's take a look.
Particularly one that telescopes to 15 feet. You can get those high limbs with that. Matter of fact, it'd be really cool. There are a couple of big wasps' nests here.
I'm sorry. You're right. It's available on Amazon as well. It's not exclusive. Regardless, still dope.
I mean, but what I was going to say was there's a couple of wasps' nests around here that I think have been vacated, and I want to chop down, and then they could potentially be sold to vintage stores or something like that. Like there's some antiquarian designer who is looking for a wasp's nest to hang above a farmhouse table in their new Back to the Land restaurant.
What's the competitor to Tractor Supply? Harbor Freight Tools.
Harbor Freight. Oh my
God.
God.
Harbor Freight?
You're now. I do not.
I love
no.
Harbor Freight. I got Harbor Freight down here in Miami. If you ever watch a great Instagram influencer video and they've got a great looking mechanics table behind them, they've likely gotten it from Harbor Freight because they make again, not top of the line, but damn beautiful storage units for the garage that could be converted to anything. So shout out Harbor Freight.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
All right, Harbor Freight. Well, you've sent me the link now, so I will go get into the tool shed rabbit hole.
But I think that back to Tractor Supply for a second. Everybody is looking for an untouched opportunity somewhere, an untouched moment that will drive foot traffic. I think at the end of the day, it's like the gateway. Tractor Supply, how do they make it cool? Honestly, I'd love to work with Tractor Supply. I think it'd be some interesting things, or even a Harbor Freight as an example. But Martha, to me, it feels right for them. I don't know, Ben.
So this is interesting, actually. So as you were talking about the partnership or the collaboration like this as a way to drive foot traffic. So, I mean, obviously foot traffic is a relative term, right? Like web traffic, foot traffic, earned media, all, corollaries to one another in this case, where we're talking about just like new ways to get attention. To put your brand front and center, or, in the consumer's mind, or in a potential consumer's mind. What had occurred to me as you were saying was like, okay, well, that means that Martha Stewart is the new $75 TV at Best Buy. And I mean that to say, like, you enter into this collaboration because even though it is a loss leader, or perhaps because it is a loss leader, so rather than trying to get people in on price, on identical commodity, you're getting them in on exclusive collaboration, knowing that really what you're doing is you're upselling them all of the basic goods that you make high margins on, not on selling them shitloads of whatever this
Somebody
is.
that's never entered that store, who hasn't seen the profile of what they sell.
And the idea of collaborations raising profiles there's nothing new or revolutionary about that. Right. But equating the collaborative effort or the collaborative partnership directly to a loss leader, I think I have never heard anybody say that before. And as you said it, I was just like, oh, that's exactly what this is. It's like we start to think about the collaboration not as a thing that is brand building, but rather as a thing that is, eventuating people to the bottom of the funnel.
Right. And don't forget where Tractor Supply, where Tractor Supply and these stores are, right? They're in markets that sometimes are considered underserved, and shit, they own those spaces.
Well, but it's in that way, does Gap and Palace, for instance, let's talk about that. The Gap and Palace collection is, I think, has been universally praised.
It's on sale now, right? It's on sale now.
People like the stuff. It is well, importantly, it is for sale. It is not on sale. And
for sale,
the price points that it's getting for, Gap seem, I think, are on the higher end of what they would do, certainly. But so you think of it as being like, okay, well, this is something where they're charging a higher price point. They're testing the elasticity or the purchasing power of some of their customers. They're bringing in new customers who are there for the Palace of it all. Specifically, they are sending a signal to the market in terms of their cultural currency, et cetera. But maybe what they're really doing is saying, we're going to spend money here instead of discounting here. And that's going to be the thing that is our loss leader, right? Like the net loss on Palace is made up for the fact that we don't have to discount.
And when you say net loss
on our inline,
are you talking about in terms of notoriety?
No. I'm speculating purely.
I think they sell a lot of this stuff. I think that this collection is going to generate real revenue.
No. I don't disagree with you. This is metaphorically speaking. When I say loss leader, I mean it metaphorically speaking. Okay. Like the Palace guys are smart; they're good businessmen. I would imagine they are making money on this. The Gap people are in need of heat and are finding it in interesting places, and they deserve kudos for that, I think. And the stuff that they've made in this assortment is cool. The what I was getting at, though, more so is that they could afford to treat it as a loss leader because they are making up the money elsewhere. And that's a conception that we don't really think of in these kind of collaborative efforts. Yeah. And so there's an interesting sort of mind shift there. It's a bit like Martha Stewart is probably a better example of it. It's like, is Martha Stewart are they going to sell shitloads of units to Tractor Supply customers? I don't know. Maybe. Is that going to bring a bunch of new people to Tractor Supply who would never have turned their eye to Tractor Supply? I'd venture to guess it probably will.
That's the hope, right? As we learned with the Snoop.
So they can in other words, they can overpay Martha Stewart on that one because it's going to generate a bunch of new, new custom for them.
My take on Gap Palace is, again, one of where you can show up. There's a kid that can't get to Palace, can't afford Palace, regardless of them having an online store, eBay, and so forth. And if they can convince their mom to take them to the mall and buy something from the Gap, which she's familiar with, and with product that feels really friendly. I mean, the PAL flip of Gap, I think, is obvious and genius in that sense that they can own that. For sure. But more importantly, there's a kid that can now say, look, I have Palace. I couldn't get it before. Now I have it.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, Gaps are in every major mall throughout the United States. So it is an
For sure.
access play too. It's an access to a consumer. I think it's a win-win, quite frankly. I think it's a win for the consumer, for Palace, and for Gap.
Yeah, the thing that I like, what I you can't help but put these things through the lenses of our own sort of experience and personalities and stuff. So I met Gareth, who is one of the three founders of Palace, at an event that they did at the MoMA for the launch of the Calvin Klein collection. And unbeknownst to me, but through that conversation, it turned out that we were in Philadelphia at roughly the same time. He had come over from England and moved to Cherry Hill, New Jersey or whatever, because he wanted to skate at Love Park. So when I saw the collection, I immediately thought of Philadelphia in the 90s because the stuff looks like the stuff that we would have worn at that time. And I put an Instagram comment on his IG about the Gap outlet at 17th and Chestnut that all of the skateboarders shopped at, because that was you could get Gap was one of those brands where you could wear it to Love, and then you could wear it to the party that night, right? It was, whereas you couldn't necessarily do that with some of the more skate endemic brands. And so I don't, who knows whether the Gap outlet no longer there at 17th and Chestnut in Philly was the thing that sort of kicked off this partnership. But I like the idea that it's rooted in some kind of real, in a truth.
I bet it.
And a specificity.
I bet it did. The last point I want to make is you're right. Rather than discount their product, they can offer a different tier of product through a major retailer, and it makes sense. So yeah, shout out to
still drive new
Gareth
new,
and
new
Lev
custom,
and the team over there for what they've been able to do. Again, one of the very few breakout brands of the last, I would say, 10 years or more, who have been able to just, everything they touch just feels right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they do it for the right reasons. They do it with a sense of possibility, and they do it with a sense of humor. And they seem to be, good on the business side of it too.
Right.
Just in terms of keeping the ship, level, which is not easy. What else has been going on? So news in my life, right? The college decisions have come in or are starting to come in. I was just at Breakfast Club and we were talking about that with the woman across the table from me. Shout out Sandra. Nam is waiting on a couple of college decisions. Campbell got his final decisions over the weekend. We're going up to Syracuse, which is one of the schools that he got into, to go check that out. But it is an interesting moment in our lives as parents. This thought that he's going to be departing the house in, I don't know, 150 days or something like that. Just at the time when we're starting to get real cultural exchange. You talked about Adi, showing you the Nike Air Max stuff. Campbell showed me or sent me a film called Spots that is about the way that skateboarders view the built environment. And it's done as a sort of an informer video for a layperson, right? It would be the sort of thing that you show to your mom to why are these skateboarders tearing up the wall in front of my house? Well, Mom, watch the video and you'll see what the skateboarders see in the wall, and then you'll understand why they're here. And then you can either decide to embrace them and bring them Kool-Aid, or you can, I don't know what, put up
there was
anti-vagrant spikes and chase them away.
This is the cool thing, man. Especially with your son or my son or the young generation, the hope is that they can explore and find their own things. You know what I mean? And
right. Yeah, for sure.
And again, that we're humble enough to know that sometimes the decisions are theirs,
Yeah. Well, that actually brings up an interesting point. That the media saturation this week has been Jonathan Haidt, the NYU professor and author of a new book in which he lays out propositions for how he makes the argument basically that from the rise of social media and particularly mobile phones beginning in 2013 or so, you have a increase in political polarity, isolation, loneliness, and then attendant sort of failure rates in social terms of teenagers, specifically around like self-harm, social participation, socialization skills, all of that sort of stuff. On its face, all of this stuff makes sense. It has been whipped into a frenzy that you and I might have different points of view on. And I wonder about this. I feel like my kids are old enough that they have come through the gauntlet prior to this analysis and have found their way through it okay. Right? Not to say that they aren't affected by things that I wish they hadn't seen or dynamics that I don't totally understand. But I think they've come through it okay. I've heard from a bunch of people who have kids younger than mine, kids your age, people with kids your age, or whatever the case is, who are very much like, I have to ban my kids from phones. I have to ban my kids from screens. I have to ban my kids. I have to basically lock my kids in closets and make sure that, nobody ever sees them type thing. And my attitude is much more like yours, right? Which is that, or what you just said a second ago, which is that the kids will find their way through. But I'm surprised that so many people are so terrified by the social conditions today. Where's your head on that?
I'm of course worried. My son is an 8-year-old and my daughter's 5, and they spend time on devices. But I had a little bit of a moment yesterday, which I thought was really interesting. He's been working. My son, who's in 3rd grade, he's been working on a book report for Women's Month, Women's History, and
Women's History Month, right? March.
On Georgia O'Keeffe, and
interesting.
He kept asking me. He's really into music right now. Very much as an 8-year-old into music. He's found the acts that are his. They're all pretty clean for the most part. They're safe. And what's interesting is that I made an agreement with him. Like, look, you can listen or watch videos like after you get your homework done. And he's like, can I just listen to music while I'm doing my homework? And I'm like, no. And finally I just said, you know what? Okay, fine. And you know what? He performed, at least with me, was able to complete and do pretty damn fine on the homework they had to do just by having that background music and letting him have that space to kind of do it in his own way, and of course you got to keep an eye on to ensure that he's not slipping and, turn on the YouTube videos. But I am worried, but at the same time, I think I don't, we do our best to get outside. We're outside a lot.
Yeah.
There are ways to ensure that your child, is going to be fine.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I guess that was what concerned me about a lot of this dialogue. And it was driven by one particular conversation I had where it was like this guy who is a scholar, an eminent expert, is backed by data, so on and so forth, is basically saying, we have to get kids off of screens. We have to get kids off of social media. I don't disagree with that at its out.
Well, my son is not. Right? My kids are not on social media.
Well, yeah. Well, and sorry, I don't mean to muddy waters by suggesting that. That was not what I meant. But my point more so is like so when I had this conversation with somebody whose kids are a little younger than mine, and I was just like, I don't know, man, my kids are coming through just fine, and they're showing me that they are resilient and flexible in a way that I think we ought to give all kids credit for. And her response was like, well, sure, our kids are, because they're well supported, but what about everybody else's kids? And there's this weird like us them thing implied there, like we the educated elite versus the unwashed masses. And it's like kids are kids in that they are all to some degree resilient, to some degree flexible, and learn in a way that I think we have to give them credit for. And it just the implied polarity of that, or I don't know what, like,
hey, listen, it's
class consciousness of it bothered me.
It's definitely there. Yeah. So it's very surprising sometimes the things that you hear from other parents, and
well, and we understand why, right? Like they're nervous. They don't know what is going to happen, and they don't have the benefit of as I do, of having seen the kids come through, right, and be okay on the other side. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Anyway, that's the other thing that's been hogging my feed this week.
Amazing. Well, you wasted another 30 minutes with Culture Club Show. Jeff. No, thank you so much for listening. Go ahead, Ben.
Please like and subscribe. I get to do the Jeff part this week. Please like and subscribe on all of the platforms that you are encountering this on, and we'll be back next week for another Culture Club half hour, if not sooner.
I'm going to try to
potentially with other people.
We're going to get Jian next week. We're going to do it. We're going to get Jian in.
All right, let's do that.
All right, dude. See you, man.
Okay.
See you, everyone.
Later.
Cheers.